So let's just get right into it. I've entitled my talk, Tech Trends Sold. What I'm going to be talking to you about today are emerging technology platforms, not solely social media, but looking at it in a very broad perspective. Some of the trends and usage around that can hopefully help you to drive your sales, or at least the conversation around sales. So let me get the clicker and start right off. So let's just start right off with a bang, because I figured you'd be digesting and maybe not hear too well, or be paying too much attention to me. I figured this might do it, right? So really, this is going to give a little bit of context for what I'm talking about today. This woman and her team knows how to be able to insert themselves into the conversation of cultural lifestyle worldwide by understanding what provokes, what people were thinking, how to use the right platform at the right time, how to integrate them, and really just create a complete circle of communication storm around them. This image, when it was first put on the web, within the first couple of hours, worldwide, generated 2 million searches, just Kim Kardashian, paper. What I want to do today is be able to give you some tools that you can walk out of this room with right now to be able to be maybe not that provocative, but at least to be able to get onto the conversation of the people who are your targets. What we're going to do today is answer the question, hopefully at least in part, in the time that we have. How can I insert myself organically into the conversation of today's tech-savvy travel consumer? A lot of different platforms happening, a lot of different ways to really have so much competition going on. So this is what I really want to focus on today. How can you create better branding, better messaging around that? But in order to be able to do that, we need to look at culture through a technology lens, right? So I don't believe in looking at things in silos, just only about behavior or only about technology platforms. It's really something that you know yourself is intersecting and integrated every day. And so this is part of what I do, as Andrew said, as a Digi cultural trend analyst. So that means that I am deciphering and forecasting trends, attitudes, behavior around culture as it intersects with emerging tech platforms. So I provide companies with strategy, forecast and analysis, helping them to be able to identify opportunities, all so that they can better drive their numbers further and faster. So let me give you a little bit of background about myself so that you have not only a better understanding about that, but also so that you can see how I came to the resources and ideas to be able to give to you today. So just very briefly, I started, I guess my real kickoff as a career at MTV Networks. I worked in production for several years. And then I started my own agency called Punch Media Group after that. And maybe it's giving my age away a little bit, but that's okay. When we started, there was not really any such thing as digital. So we started out as a traditional marketing and branding company. After several years, we changed the core competency of the business to really focus more on digital. It's always been something I've been very excited about. I took some classes in coding. I'm nobody's engineer, but at least to be able to better relate to those with whom I work, and my team, who I additionally hired. And so we worked with, as Andrew said, everybody from Snoop Dogg, Jay-Z, Microsoft, TBS, and more, eventually providing mobile content, strategy, consulting, all in this new world, being able to help companies create messaging that better resonates with their target audience. At the height of the company, I had offices in New York, Paris, and LA, and I lived between the two continents, France and the US. And we even drove one company's revenue in a particular genre by 87%. It was working really, really well, until it kind of didn't. After several years, I just had a very hard time being able to still achieve the success that I had. And I'm a very type A personality. I went to an Ivy League school, and when you are like that and you decide something's going to work, it just has to work. And when it doesn't, you're very taken aback. A lot of the things that I had tried that had always worked in business were just really not kind of hitting. At first I thought it was me, and then I looked around and I noticed other entrepreneurs were struggling with the same thing. and not just them, but small businesses and corporations, I understood that things were really changing. And it wasn't really about top down so much anymore, but really bottom up. So I decided that what I wanted to do, I hadn't anything else to prove to anybody who had worked with major corporations, helped to make them millions of dollars. And so I wanted to kind of pull back after my staff found their positions and look at what had kind of made me successful to begin with, but delve further down into it, which was always being able to see farther out and be able to actually almost exploit the opportunities as they're coming up within culture for businesses. So that's what I decided to do. And then I moved from kind of informal research to formal research, which resulted in this book, again, looking at and forecasting trends as they're intersecting with emerging tech platforms, seeing where we're going next with that, and being able to identify opportunities. And lo and behold, Amazon selected it as one of its best new media studies when it was released. But I have to tell you, it was kind of one of those things where, you know how like those documentaries win the Oscar, but like nobody's seen them? So it was a wonderful critical acclaim, but it hadn't sold like, you know, millions and millions of books. But it was really great because then it kind of kicked off what I am now, which is Digi cultural trend analyst. So I provide, as Andrew told you, consulting for a number of major companies. I provide commentary as it pertains to breaking news stories for MSNBC. I have a special venture with Comcast that's coming up, and I contribute to Huffington Post, Daily Beast, and others, all around this kind of new area of trends as they converge with tech platforms. So I love being able to help companies and brands at this kind of juncture in the journey because I know what it's like because I've done it myself. So I'm not just speaking to you today as like some thought leader, if you will. I've been on the front lines as an entrepreneur. I know what it is to like have to make numbers certain quarters. So that's really how I'm speaking to you today in a more kind of holistic fashion. So I want to talk, as I said, about how you can maybe better insert your brand into the kind of tech-savvy international traveler's mind. Where is the intersection at that point that you can really kind of get in there and at least, if not make the sale right then, be able to start the conversation over digital platforms? I've set up the talk just so that you know in 3 parts so that it's, I think, a little bit easier to digest. The first, we're going to look at kind of insights and mindsets within the top several regions, which after some wonderful meetings with Destination DC, we're going to be looking at China, Germany, France, Australia, and Brazil. So giving you a little bit of a window very quickly into some of the digital behavior of those regions, but as it pertains to travel. And then I'm going to give you my kind of 3 actionable items that if anybody wanted to could walk out of this room right now and be able to at least think about implementing to drive your business in this particular realm. And then we're going to talk about emerging like trends and tech, which is one of my favorite areas. So let's get started. Let's talk about everybody's favorite. Like I think for today, it's all about like the spotlight on China. I think everybody knows why, because it's just so much opportunity there and so large. Oh, by the way, don't worry about having to like take notes if you don't want to. All of this is very much fleshed out in a several-page document that'll go out from my office to Destination DC's to yours, so you can just listen if that's more convenient and comfortable for you right now. So a couple of quick insights I want to give you on China. I love what, first of all, a lot of the data is showing on this. There's a major paradigm shift happening right now in China that before it was about shopping being the luxury choice. And now what we're starting to see is that travel is the luxury choice. Right? I guess if you want to impress your friends or whatever, it's all about that. And the shopping takes place once you arrive at the destination. A quick sidebar on this. I told you I've been living between France and the US for the last couple of years. And I almost got arrested within dealing with this whole shopping thing. This is how I know how passionate it can really be. Walking down what's kind of considered to be like Madison Avenue area of Paris, and a Chinese couple approaches me. And between broken French and broken English, and my French is even really not not that good even now, but then it was really like hard. And they approached me with this catalog that I had never even seen before, all of this Louis Vuitton in either Mandarin or like Cantonese with it, like full-on catalogs. And at the time, and I don't know if it's still the case, and Louis, probably you could say better, there was like a quota on how much you could buy, like Louis Vuitton, every store in Paris, they knew once you hit your quota, that was it. But you know, I guess after you travel that many miles, you're like, I'm gonna figure out how to get my Louis. So they just would approach people. I didn't know that this was a trend until they approached me, trying to offer me euros. This was like right around when the franc had just changed to the euro. It was approximately like 200 euros that they were offering me, pointing to this, like trying to get me to buy like a couple of these wallets. So just as I'm mulling it over, like, I don't know, maybe I could use that 200 euros like toward your shoes I want, you know? Here comes a French police officer. And somebody was asking me just the other day about the unfortunate terrorist attacks that had taken place in France and just about the French police in general. And I said, you know, it's not the same at all as it is here. I mean, even with like NYPD. Anybody remember visiting like New York after like 9/11? And people would be taking like photos, like tours with the police, like peace. It was like they were rock stars. In France, they would arrest you like if you did that. They would think you were like probably insane. So when French police comes over, you're not trying to get involved in that. So he came and started asking me what was going on. I was like, I really don't know. I can't even understand. He turns his back to me as if to say, like, I'm not going to deal with this, like, American-speaking poor French, and starts dealing with the poor, like, Chinese couple. I would like to have stayed to help, but I mean, I had a meeting later on that day. I didn't want to get arrested. But I'm just saying all this to say that the shopping scenario is really, it's no joke, and it's not really kind of a fantasy. Like, people were even, like, potentially going to jail for this. Data shows us that the amount of money being spent, as I'm sure Eric knows, growing 18%, now topping Germany, as he had also mentioned. But what I think is really interesting, given my expertise, is what we're seeing is the rise of self-booking, right? So why is this happening? From the research that I've done, seems to be that the tourism laws are creating additional taxes. And so in order to be able to circumvent that, and Louis, you'll tell me if I'm wrong, this is about, one, being able to self-book, and really seemingly like no worries or apprehensions about this at all. I want to just make certain that it's understood that it's not just using like platforms in China, Airbnb, Hotels.com, US platforms, Chinese platforms, all about being able to kind of take the reins and go on ahead and book the trips as they see fit. I'm going to give you like a quick like little LDC Digi tip as we go along with these insights, just to kind of tuck in the back of your mind. With this market, as we all know, and I think it kind of reminds me of when like the U.S. Census reports came out not long ago that showed that, you know, the Latino market was growing here, and all the advertisers are like, we all need to speak Spanish. Similar with China, it's really super over-targeted. So something to kind of keep in mind whether it's you or like working with your partners, this is really about being able to create something that I've heard other people say, make the campaign more sophisticated. I say more compelling, engaging, and creative. So just kind of a couple of notes there on digital behavior around China. I want to move now to France and Germany. I'll break them out. Germany kind of almost the opposite, I think, of China in many respects. So long-haul trips, still using the travel agent, as I believe the PR person from Clausen, a partner, had mentioned earlier. And by the way, these stats come partially from Clausen, the others from China, from an organization called Skift. But the web is used as a major source of kind of prep or information prior to going to the travel agent. But here's where I think it gets more and more interesting, and we're going to talk about this further into the talk. For example, here with holidaycheck.de, major site for being able to go to online, where you can see different ratings, reviews, video, etc., from those who have already traveled to different areas, coming back to German site to be able to report upon it. This is peer-to-peer reviews. I'm going to talk a lot more about that later, but here it's particularly interesting because, as you can see, 9 million ratings so far and counting. This is a highly trafficked site, and there are obviously those which kind of mirror that in other territories. So this is, I think, very key to keep in mind. Again, if you're working with partners or venturing into the areas yourself, what kind of influence are you having within the kind of, again, peer-to-peer kind of reviews or online reviews? How are you utilizing them, and particularly video? We're going to talk more about the importance of video online and how the numbers are just skyrocketing in terms of importance in video views. But within that, very important in terms of a tip whenever you're looking at being able to create or have somebody create for you reviews online. Just a quick counterintuitive fact from Clausen: travel agencies up like in 2014 and don't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon. That's the number, almost 10,000 now, travel agencies in Germany. So this would be really about, as I have here another tip as well, thinking about cross-channel. First of all, I'm never going to be one of those tech people who are going to be like, it's all about technology, we're getting rid of paper. That's ridiculous, right? I mean, I think that they had these kind of conversations when radio was kind of fighting with TV and TV was first introduced. We still consume radio. We just don't gather around it like listen to stories anymore, but it coexists. And I think that's what's really important, if nothing, that you take away from this, that it's all about being able to have the right media mix for your message, for the country, for that particular target audience, right? But I'm giving you at least the kind of digital side of that. Moving on now to France, and again, a place that I have a bit of first-hand experience with. These kids are no joke in terms of being able to use online search to be able to make decisions, to be able to look out for the very next vacation. I know a lot of people I would speak to there, and I think all of you in the room know that those in Europe get many more weeks of vacation than we do here in the US. And you'd be like, how was the trip to the Alps? And they'd be like, great, we're planning the next one to south of France. Always on the move and using digital definitely to be able to help them to kind of navigate and decide what to do. However, it seems that data shows here that digital deals and promotions really drive the decisions in France. I think this partially has something to do with the fact that sales, at least retail-wise, are governed by, well, the government, parliament, etc. And so they only happen like twice a year. And so that's why it's relatively crazy to go to the equivalent of like, say, Nordstrom's at sales time in Paris. Like, I don't know, Teresa, maybe you might have experienced this, but it's very regimented. Therefore, you want to be able to get the attention of a potential French traveler. It's all about being able to offer special promotions online. It seems to be driving the interest. Again, here, blogs, digital comments, online videos, all those peer-to-peer reviews seem to be influencing even more in this market than even in the US. I liken this to, remember when Zagat or Michelin used to be the end-all be-all for which restaurant to go to, right? Now we turn to each other. It's about Yelp. Not to say that Zagat's gone anywhere, but depending on the demographic, and particularly if it's skewing probably 54 and younger, it's about Yelp. And I want to just really take a quick moment to talk about why that's important, right? So this is kind of like the cultural side of the digital discussion. It's really key to think about this and insert it into your campaigns, not because it's like the trendy thing to do or whatever, because someone told you it's right. The mindset is important here, because we are all dealing with a trust deficit, right? Whether it's this culture or other cultures, as a result of financial collapse and crises several years ago, so many different things. It's about the rise of populism, right? I trust you, you trust me, because, well, you probably haven't been paid off to say that that was a good hamburger at XYZ place, right? So I can trust you. That's why it's important to be able to put energy into that in terms of thinking about a digital strategy. Not to mention that it's not very expensive to do either. Mobile here, very, very big. I remember when I first arrived in Paris and they were, texting each other SMS, and you come back here to the US and say something about SMS and people be like, what? And it really wasn't until American Idol started where I could say, you know when you text to vote, that's like SMS, that's texting. And I'd be like, oh, okay, I get it. Mobile very much ahead, and of course Asia even farther in terms of the usage. But mobile websites, and this is kind of a pet peeve of mine, I guess, coming from that background, have to be formatted like properly, right? Especially because there's so much comparison going on, price comparison with mobile, et cetera. I can't tell you how many brands you'll see where the site's kind of like it's half there, right? And they haven't thought about the screen size or the number of seconds on video on mobile as opposed to maybe online. Particularly in France, which is heavily, or where there's heavy mobile usage for a lot of online search, definitely important to think about what one site looks like in any market, but particularly there. I'm going to jump over now to the UK. And, oh, by the way, this information, just in case you want to know before you get the handout, is from another wonderful Destination DC partner, Global Travel Marketing. I had a chance to talk with them a little bit, which is great. UK, somewhat mirroring French kind of behavior, not necessarily. French, I forgot to note as well, seems like data shows that they like kind of experiences that are a little bit off the beaten track, not just solely like if they're coming here solely the monuments, etc. They want to experience that and more of the culture. UK, on the other hand, seems to be that which likes the standard. Hotels, resorts, that's what they're looking for, as they're using a lot of online tools to be able to search, and they're gathering information to be able to make their decisions. Here I'm finding that online travel reviews, again, becoming more and more of the influencers, up to 36% now. Again, mobile websites in this market too, being very much utilized for information gathering, price comparison, etc. But what I think separates or differentiates this market from others is that by the time they start like kind of fiddling around a bit with information and research, they actually already have their trip decided. So I'm going to go X place for so-and-so's wedding or this place for a particular trip. They seem to like to be promoted the opportunities for future trips because, again, always a lot more weeks of vacation than we have here in the US. So here I think to win in this market, it's also very important to think about getting onto the radar early enough so that you're in the mix for future decisions that are going to be made across digital platforms. Here are just a couple of statistics and percentages so that you can see the comparison across France, Germany, and the UK. Again, this will be in the handout that you'll be getting by email. And now we're going to jump over to Australia, which is just really interesting market. A lot of this information I got from Deloitte, as well as ComScore. You can see here, I don't need to read percentages to you, but I'm just wondering when Australians like have a chance to just, I don't know, walk around and eat. They are like just, I don't know, carnivorous almost about utilizing platforms, no matter whether it's traditional or what I call legacy platforms or digital. A total mix. Still renting movies even at 25%. That's like almost insane for somebody like me, who's studying this stuff. You see the multitasking with using the mobile phone and TV at the same time. Where I think it gets interesting is that half of those who were questioned during this Deloitte survey said that even if glossy digital magazine was offered, they would still go for the glossy. So this here again means media mix even more important in a market such as Australia. Highly influenced by, again, online opinion, blogs, video, etc. And it seems to be as well that long-haul trips have dropped 3%. I think it's because, of the drop of the Australian dollar. However, Gate 7, your partner in Australia, has said that intention to travel has never been higher. And so what seems to be the clinch, or that which clinches the deal, is the price of the travel ticket and being able to communicate that effectively over online platforms. So here I would say that there's a trip It's all about a tip, rather, it's all about making that mix, or that media mix, having it as part of your digital campaign, as well as being able to just think about accessing the market in new ways with great content that is actually distributed really smoothly. So, I don't know, I was just kind of very much surprised about that, even though with the Australian dollar dropping. And then finally, last but certainly not least, and here are a few percentages again that will be included in the handout. And just to be able to show you, again, some of the percentage increases over the last couple of years in online travel agencies versus offline airlines, et cetera. Personal recommendations, again, we see going up. And now moving on to Brazil. And I will say with Brazil, ton of information about digital usage, not that much about really the convergence of digital usage with travel, but I'll give you some of what I've been able to find. All of this, I would like to say, is a pretty edgy area. Even when I reached out to certain behavioral professionals, et cetera, at Bing, at Microsoft's Bing, they were like, we kind of have this information, but we don't even have the manpower to pull it. So when you're talking about the intersection of how one is using these platforms and how that affects travel, it's really very new, and so I don't know, I'm just really excited to be able to bring you what I found today. Nobody's really talking about this just yet. So you see here with Brazil, and I think some of you already know this because it's one of the countries, the emerging territories to watch. Obviously, very much active across mobile. You'll see, number 2 in the world for Twitter. I had an opportunity to talk to one of the leading economists via contact at Forbes on Brazil, the Brazilian market, looking at how much online video has grown, how much, what the percentage is for people who have bought something online and what the forecast is. But the real takeaway on this is that even though you see these numbers, web penetration in Brazil considered very low still. So again, with this type of market, I would think that marketing a media mix is very important, but to be able to kind of think toward the future about how emerging tech platforms will be coming into the picture more and more. So this is kind of it for the insights, because I want to jump into what I'm saying are actionable items. And I'm excited about this because I've come up with a couple that I think are not your average, right? I think everybody's going to tell you, use social media, tweet, put the things out there. But what can you do that's different? What can you do with that maybe your competitors who didn't come today, that you can do to kind of either move farther ahead than them, look different once you get there? These are the things that I want to give you right now, because you already know or should know about social media and those types of things in general. The first actionable item I want to give you, I'm calling the away game, right? So we're thinking about how to be able to potentially reach that traveler in his or her own market. And so I'm calling this just to be accessible in new ways. You want to be wherever the traffic is, not just on social media or not just on a typical travel site, but where the action is. And so I'm using Alibaba as an example, but obviously this can be carried across the territories that I mentioned already, or even any others. There's always a hot spot or hot spots online. Alibaba is a very, very interesting scenario within China. I'm very much impressed with this company because it considers itself a lifestyle company, right? Not just a tech kind of company. And their whole mantra is that they want to be part of the consumer's life 24 hours a day, right? I'm sure maybe some of you have seen that they're even going to be producing like pictures. It's a Hollywood deal now for Alibaba because they just have so much access to data, so much traffic. Really being able to leverage the brand in all kinds of ways, not just about, kind of shopping. It's, for those who may not know, and I think there's probably none, that it's likened to the Chinese version of Amazon, but it's like that on speed. Here, I think it's very interesting because when I started to kind of craft ideas, if I were actually going to create strategy myself, I thought, I would really kind of put my brand somehow on Alibaba that was different, to be able to speak to and be in front of the consumer in China. And I thought, well, maybe it's kind of crazy, I don't know. And just a couple of days after that, Burberry had announced that they were going to, or had created its own kind of luxury site on or within Alibaba. Still have the same vibe, but within this larger web space. And when they were asked why, they said, because we want to be available. We want to be seen and able to interact with our potential customers as well as the customers that we have right now. I think that company is so smart. Somebody in the room knows that I love them for their digital innovation, and they know what they're doing, right? CNBC just reported on a little bit of an anecdote of CNBC. Sales up 13%, because they know how to do this stuff. Be where the customer is online in an organic way. Now, the interesting thing as well about Alibaba, because I actually wanted to have them speak with you guys by Skype video, but they're at Davos right now, like living it up and being kings. So not available, but they recently launched, and maybe away from Destination DC, I'm sure you already knows this, but a division of Alibaba, they're gonna just take over the world, called Taobao, which is solely for travel. And so for my money, it would really be about either deciding internally here in the US or working with a strategic partner about how to be as innovative and creative across that platform to be in front of the Chinese consumer, or as I said, Brazil, France, whatever, consistently in a new way that you won't, just expect XYZ brand to be. I think this works whether you're a hotel, whether you're a restaurant, whether you're a retail brand. So that's thing number one, is to think a bit, and I hate to use the cliche, thinking outside of the box, but it really is about being accessible and being where the digital consumer is. Item number two I want to give you, I'm calling be helpful. Right, so maybe you didn't actually get to make that sale or make that connection in the country. You still have the chance, or the next chance, on the runway, in the airport. That's what I mean by that. I'm sure we've all traveled in different places. How do you feel when you land, or even before you land, and there's a lot of stress. Sometimes, it can even be a different alphabet. If you're able to get help at that moment, you create a loyalty almost immediately. I started thinking about how mobile applications can and should be better used by those who are here in the travel agency in this particular environment. So I started doing more and more digging. I had an opportunity to interview Gig Guru, which is no joke. They're so good that they were recently acquired by TripAdvisor. 49% of their traffic comes from foreign travelers as they reach here in the United States. And you pop open this app. It tells you any number of things. Where's the closest Avis, et cetera, et cetera. Again, for my money, what I would be doing is either having my partners or myself, my company, looking at which types of mobile apps to potentially partner with, create some strategy, and either do things like an app takeover with Reskins for a couple of hours, create native advertising somehow within the app to be able to not just push the brand, right, but to be able to welcome whomever it is to the particular city we're talking about here in DC. How can it actually be done so that it's creative, so that you're beginning to create that kind of conversation? This, I think, is something that's not really utilized enough at all by those who are not really quite aware or maybe utilizing mobile applications in the way that they should be. I'm going to talk a little bit more about how these mobile applications used on landing and in the airport, how they're going to tie into an emerging platform that I'm really, really excited about. But right now, I just want to be able to put this out here that there are a number of apps, and very, very good ones, high traffic, that I think can really be able to provide, at least like I said, if not a direct sale, that which can create branding, visibility, the conversation, engagement in really innovative ways that can provide a kind of human connection that's not just about the direct sale. So that is my suggestion for number two. Number three is even a little bit more different. So I'm calling this one, be the digital differentiator. So this is while you're here, or while rather you have the consumer here. And this might be maybe a bit more appropriate for those who are in restaurants or tours, what have you. Maybe even to a certain extent hotels, but I think by the time you've reached here, unless you're like a crazy friend of mine in Brazil who never does this, you already have your hotel booked. social good, the rise of this whole new value system, social responsibility, is becoming so important to brands I can't even tell you. And it's not just some kind of kumbaya scenario where it's just like, okay, well, let's be good, or like write a check for philanthropy. It's much deeper than that for a variety of different social reasons, which we could get into in another talk. But because this is happening, brands need to start to think about how they are utilizing their money to give back, or their strength to give back, in order to be able to attract more sales. And it's not just made up. Fleischman and Hilliard, PR giant, when they did an extensive study on this not long ago, showed that 91% of the people that they spoke to, 91%, would switch brands if they thought that the other brand was actually doing something around social good that was consistent, that was holistic. So what's this kind of mean for you guys in the travel scenario? This is starting to become an opportunity, again, to differentiate oneself from one's competitor. What can you offer that maybe someone down the street isn't able to? And it's starting to really take off, and I'm kind of surprised. One of the key places is New York. A couple of hotels there starting to be able to, oh, I forgot to mention as well, the Intercontinental Hotel Groups is doing something very interesting on the Alibaba Taobao scenario, but I can talk with you about that later. There's just like so much, I'm so excited. But there's a particular hotel in New York seizing like this total opportunity. If you stay with them, you get the opportunity to plant vegetables that will be later used in a New York shelter. Now, why is that interesting? It's interesting for somebody who's maybe coming from another country and they want to get into it in a different way, taking longer, you have longer to stay here, and so it's an additional afternoon, whatever. But why is that interesting to the brand? Because see all those at the bottom, Twitter, et cetera, what's the first thing I'm going to do if I'm planting a tomato seed? Selfie, right? And didn't we say that online blogs, comments, reviews, et cetera, drive the conversation? So now you have the consumer kind of doing the work for you. And it really works out well if you're able to develop a deeper kind of connection with them so that they become brand ambassadors for you. A lot of times I see companies trying to do this thing themselves, and it's like hokey. Like you can feel that it's like not real. But if you have the actual guest, if you will, taking these photos, doing that type of thing, it really resonates, and it makes one stand out. There's another hotel in a different area that gives you the opportunity to go to like this conservation where there are blue iguanas. I didn't even know there are blue iguanas. But of course, again, the first thing you're going to do is get out your phone, here's me and the blue iguana, courtesy of whatever. I think that this is going to just get bigger and bigger, and so it's obviously something that is intersecting with cultural change and mindset with digital platforms that can be hugely powerful, and it does not cost very much money. So these, again, are my top 3 kind of actionable items for you. Again, be accessible. You want to be where your digital consumer is, not just travel-wise, but just where the traffic is. Be helpful by getting yourself involved in like apps that are used on the ground, ones you can turn your phone back on when you're landing, etc., in the airport. And 3, be the digital differentiator. This, I don't think that you will lose on at all. And I know maybe some of you are saying, aren't you giving me extra work to do? We're not a philanthropy like kind of organization, we're a restaurant, or et cetera, et cetera. This is where sister organizations come in, right? There are companies that do this very, very well. Happy to set it up for you. All you have to do is sign. What's the agreement? Is there a rev share? Whatever. You don't have to always do it. It's about really having the right partners. We did this so much when I ran my digital agency, and we had crazy things that we had to do. I remember even like having to drive ratings for a new show on TBS in 14 days after they had already blown through most of the money. That's when you know if you're creative or not. That's when you know how to like even parse out different bloggers. It was interesting to listen to the debate about is it pro or con with bloggers, with not. You use whatever you can, and in whatever mix. Whatever percentage, and it might not be the right one for this time, but it might be the right percentage for the next time. whatever, I say use it all, especially if it's not going to cost a lot extra. So I'm going to give you a bonus now, quick, because I think we're probably like getting down to time. I know I said I'd give you 3 actionable items, but my bonus is video. I would love to see brands use video more creatively in a space that takes a certain amount of time that is easily consumable, and that functions well on a laptop, and keeping in mind via mobile, knowing that most of it's consumed via mobile. I say this because, and again, this will be in your handout, look at the percentage where the influence is that makes up video. Why are we seeing this more in like native everybody understands what I mean when I say native advertising, right? And things like that. Right, if you're creating advertising that's telling a story through it about your brand, etc., video is going to win hands down with that every time. Statistics show that video is just obviously being consumed across the board. It is, I don't know, it's just vital, it's mandatory, it's everything else. How within your digital campaign are you using video? How can you use it differently? How can you take it to the next level? Because it's driving every consumer's decision out here. And you guys are also consumers too, right? I think a lot of times if you put yourself in the place of, would I buy into that campaign? Most of the times you say no, right? Because it's just not really hitting. So I just want to go quickly through emerging opportunities because you know when we're talking about digital, things move so fast. By the time you leave the building, there's a new device or a new app or whatever. So I want to give you a couple of things that you can kind of just tuck in the back of your mind that you can have your team kind of research, you can read up on as like, I'm going to say the next 12, maximum 24 months path. We're going to look at beacons, wearables, a new change in social networks and paying with the phone really fast. First, beacons. For those who might not be aware, we used to call this like Bluetooth marketing back in the day, which means like only probably 7 years ago. The beacon is on the right here. There's a lot of talk about Apple's beacons right now. What it will do is shoot information into your phone unless you opt out. I think Eric had said there's an airport person here who's probably already on top of this. This is going to be the next hottest thing within airports, hopefully Dallas as well. Being able to just shoot information into your phone, again, if you opt in, to be able to tell you information about everything you need to as soon as you land. So when the next monorail is, if you're at an airport that has that, et cetera, think about the advertising opportunities across that. I get like totally excited about that. The branding and advertising opportunities for that you should be thinking about now in order to be able to influence, get onto the radar, part of the conversation of those who are going to be running through that airport, looking for information. How can you actually craft it so that it's holistic, not intrusive, but also helpful? Just something to be able to think about because beacons are right around the corner. Second, wearables. And I'm terribly excited about wearables. I'm going to actually be consulting with a conference that is one of the largest in the country, about 10,000 people regarding advertising. We're going to be doing a wearables track for it. So whether you're talking about glasses or wearables such as Fitbit, etc., wearables are going to be insanely huge once they become a little bit more interesting than just monitoring your heart rate, right? And they're all working on that right now. And I know that the advertising opportunity, again, across wearables will also be very, very huge. Important to kind of just, again, tuck in the back of your mind, to read, to just kind of slightly stay up on what's being introduced next. What is brand X or Y doing across whatever wearable? Because you'll want to be there, because that's where your customer is. And you might think this is like a little bit Jetsons, like futuristic. 61% of headphones are being used in China right now, smart headphones. That means that they're Bluetooth enabled, et cetera, et cetera. If you have a partner there, are they thinking about that? Are they helping with your strategy with that? Have they thought about, well, what audio is going through there? Because that's the new toy of the day. Again, I just want to be where my potential customer is. It doesn't have to be what we think it is. It's where they are. This one, very interested in as well, because it's part of a larger trend, not just within aircraft. Social's moving more to chat. And we know all about WhatsApp being used at just like lightning speed around the world. And this is an image that I pulled from KLM. Does everybody kind of remember KLM's meet and seat, which was almost kind of like eerie and spooky, but maybe not. If you opted in, right, so you knew through the LinkedIn profile, oh, I want to sit next to XYZ to kind of network or whatever. I think the very next thing is going to be in-air chat, right, because you have a captive audience, right? So after I've gone through my fashion magazines, my business magazines, where I've watched like 52 million movies, maybe I want to chat anonymously or not with someone else in the plane, and this is facilitated by the airline, a brand, whatever. This, I think, is going to be very, very hot because it's already starting to happen, not necessarily in flight, but with luxury brands, they're beginning to provide you with a chance to chat with VIP customers, right? So I'm going to stand back as the brand and let you talk to X about who buys the brand all the time so that you can talk about it in a way that's maybe more honest or interesting. All I'm going to do is facilitate it. A lot of times, like I said, I think that this is what you really want to do is just be part of the conversation, not necessarily make the sale, but facilitate so that the customer feels so good about it that they have to come to you next. You want to, right after somebody helps you. But again, this is just part of a larger trend that we all know within digital that everything is moving more toward chat, less towards social. Won't happen overnight, but again, something to just keep in mind. And then, of course, if Apple has its way, we're all going to be paying with a phone, right? And Apple's pretty adamant once it starts on its way. But no matter whether it's Apple or what have you, mobile payment is going to be huge. Almost certain, particularly with Alipay and China, et cetera, as you have more and more customers coming in from other countries who are going to be farther ahead than us in doing this. We're going to need to be able to provide them with the ability to do that. So this I see as kind of being twofold. Prepared to do this from a technical end, and then how are you prepared to use it from kind of a marketing and advertising kind of point of view, right? So, all right, you have the platforms, all the back end set up, but then are you using it, is it possible to be able to provide discount, loyalties, what have you? What is your game plan going to be for mobile payments for foreign travelers coming into the country? Again, just something to kind of keep in mind, to be reading about, having your team kind of checking in on it. So those are my four emerging kind of platforms to just be on the lookout for. And so finally, just some quick takeaways from the talk overall. If you've got nothing from it at all, again, as I said from the beginning, media mix is still important, but digital drives the engagement, drives the conversation. So that's why you want to kind of think about it in that manner. Consumer online reviews, rule. Definitely think about high traffic areas, mobile apps, social good, sharing, how can that be part or a better part, a widening part of your digital campaign. Definitely driving a story with video. You know, everybody's talking about storytelling right now. I mean, it is, I hate to use it's almost like a bad word because everybody's talking about storytelling so much, but it really does make sense. We're set up like this as human beings to remember stories, remember images. If I ask you right now, did I or did I not get arrested in France? What was the brand? Who was I talking to? You remember, because I told you a little story. You want to use that within your digital campaigns. And then finally, just to try and stay ahead of the digital curve, as hard as it is, but you know, either subscribe to some of the resources that I'll be giving you in the handout or others that you feel comfortable with so that you can know what's coming up. So that if it's nothing more than just being able to better correspond with your partners. And finally, it's just, you know, challenge yourself and have fun. None of this stuff is overnight. I mean, really, if it were that easy, I'd be like phoning this in from my yacht in the Mediterranean. It takes a while, and I think people don't understand that because all they see are like the big games, right? Or whoever has like millions and millions of views. It really is a process, and it's about using analytics, and if you aren't great at analytics or your team isn't, being able to hire those who are. I heard a lot about like ROI, and you can't calculate ROI. Yes, you can. Madison Avenue is doing it every day. If you aren't able to do it, then that means that there's like a weak part in the company. And so that means bringing that in. But you can do ROI. You can calculate ROI for almost anything. The point is, are you using it? Do you have certain goals and expectations from before? Is it about driving just more likes? Is it about engagement, time spent on the web? Whatever it is, it needs to be looked at, measured, and then recalibrated, and then do more of what's working. So that's why I say it's really, nothing is overnight. And so now, if I haven't talked to you to death, but I do love this area so much, I'm certainly open for Q&A, and then I'll just leave my information up there if you have any other, comments, questions, what have you. Again, all that will be included on the handout, and I think that's about it for me. Thank you so much for listening.